you say that I write about the art of filmmaking, it's more to do about the craft that goes in making cinema and the kind of impact that cinema has on our lives. Uh, I essentially specialize in writing on Hindi cinema, and in that too, I have very consciously chosen to concentrate on popular Hindi cinema. So when you say popular Hindi cinema, you're essentially what we today know as Bollywood. That is what the whole environment I write about. So I'm in the process of trying to look at something which is artistic in the downright commercial masala Hindi film industry. And it's an endeavor of my writing and on my part to try and find out that a cinema which moves a billion people and it functions as a dream machine for a billion people, can it also, within the realm of the parameters that commercial cinema has, can it be artistic? Is there something which is sociological or from the point of view of an anthropology point of view, can it impact, can it have a sociological impact on people? So that's the kind of subjects that I look. I think the whole idea of listening stories from your grandparents or from your parents or reading, when you're growing up reading comic books, in the 80s, Amar Chitrakatha used to be very popular, or the Indrazal comics. So when you read or when you see in India, you cannot avoid being influenced in some way or the other by cinema because, it's the shortest form of entertainment. It's the most accessible form of entertainment. I come from a family of writers on either side. My great-grandfather on my father's grandfather, Sir C.Y. Chintamani, was one of the youngest editors in India during the British time. Okay. He had a newspaper called The Leader from Allahabad. My maternal grandfather, Dr. Arudra, was a very renowned poet, lyricist. He used to write for cinema also. He's a Sahitya Academy Award winner. My maternal grandmother, K. Ramalakshmi, she was a very big journalist, and she still writes. She's in her 80s, and she churns out about a book a year. Okay. So there is an affinity of letters on either side of the family, but my father was in the army. The access to films that I had was, just like anybody else watching it on TV, Doordarshan during those days, or watching a film. I enjoyed watching films, and I enjoyed the whole idea of stories being told in that kind of a format. And I think at a very young age, I either wanted to be a film writer or do something related with films. So I tried my hand at filmmaking, film writing, did that for a few years. And then in the early 2000s is when I decided to start consciously writing on the kind of films that I enjoyed. And it was essentially a quest to answer certain questions which were in my mind. So that is what shaped my writing. There's a very famous quote. I don't know who said it, but it makes a lot of sense. But the problem with fiction is that it has to make sense. It has to seem plausible. So writing nonfiction is, for me, writing nonfiction is a far more enjoyable thing than writing fiction. Because not that I think that writing nonfiction is difficult. Nothing of that sort. Both have their own joys, both have their own challenges, and both have their own trials that you have to go through. But trying to make sense of life as it happened, and trying to understand how the real events played a part is a far more interesting tool, I think, than trying to base a story around a real life event or trying to imagine fiction. I mean, they say that there's a saying in Hindi also, "Jahan na paunche ravi, wahan paunche kavi," which means that even places where the sunlight does not fall, a poet or a writer can reach that place. So to make sense of something like Hindi films or popular Hindi films, or a sporting event, or trying to see that what kind of influence that Rahul Dravid wields outside the world of cricket, the fact that Sachin becomes the embodiment of a billion dreams, or Rahul Dravid becomes almost like a voice of conscience of an entire generation, that goes beyond cricket or beyond the realm of the activity that they're participating in. So I think trying to understand nonfiction or writing nonfiction, based on those kind of events, for me, that's a bigger challenge. That's a bigger kick. Brand building is something which is an inescapable thing. It happens if you write consistently, or your byline keeps coming out. Then after a while, you become a brand. Everybody can become a brand, because that is what. If somebody is coming back to read you again and again, or read your points of view, you automatically translate into a brand. It could be somebody who's blogging. It could be somebody who's writing the op-ed for a newspaper, or writing a book. So that way, the beauty of the day is that we live in, with social media, with the internet, becoming a tool to connect with people at the very basic level, and at a large number of people at the same time. So there is no difference between, say, a very prolific blogger or a very big writer today. The play field is almost equal, which means that it gives you a lot of opportunity to attract. I mean, a Salman Rushdie today has to go through the same trials as a blogger to get eyeballs. I mean, Salman Rushdie won't be doing it himself, but you get what I'm saying. Say, for example, to give you an example from the world of films, a Steven Spielberg using the camera that Steven Spielberg uses today is just the same that you and I would use if we were to make a film. The technology has leveled the play field in that sense. So it's very easy to become a brand, but at the same time, there are a lot of pitfalls, because to be an authority or to be somebody that people can keep coming back to, or you can keep getting readers again and again, you really need to have a very unique voice. So I think for me, if somebody were to ask me, how do you become an authority? Your research has to be very, very solid. The points that you're making have to resonate with somebody, because at the end of the day, writing is a process where you may think that a writer sits all alone and writes, but he or she at the end of the day knows that their work is not complete till the time somebody reads and somebody reacts. So I may be writing for myself. I may be writing to enjoy, because that is what has attracted me to that subject. But it's utterly pointless unless you read it, or somebody reads it, or agrees or disagrees with it. Take the example of the book Martian, on which the film was based. It was rejected by many publishing houses. It was self-published by the author and became one of the best sellers on Amazon. And from there, it it's become a brand. So, I mean, think about it. 20 years ago, 25 years ago, it would have been a different story. That it would have been a collection of rejection slips. But now it's suddenly the author is a sort of the author. So. Writing as a career is a very demanding career, because it is something which it's like playing a solo sport. I mean, if you're playing tennis or if you're playing badminton, you're playing against somebody. But say if you're playing golf, essentially you're playing golf with yourself. I mean, or if you're into shooting, you're competing with yourself. So you would be your biggest fan, which is not a very good thing, and you will have to be your biggest critic, which is something that many people don't want to be. So you have to. It's a very difficult trade, so to speak, because there are no set rules for that. I mean, I make schedules, I break them, and then I have to reprimand myself, or I have to give myself a treat. So these are very basic things that come to mind when you're thinking of a career in writing. Of course, when you think of a career in writing in India, it still has to be your second job, or there has to be another day job. It's very difficult to make a living from writing consistently, unless you're attached with a publishing house, or you're with some news outfit, or if you're a journalist. So there's a difference between being a writer or being a journalist. So money won't be that much. So you will have to figure everything around that. Also that, it's very, it becomes very boring, and it becomes very lonely at times, because at the end of the day, if you don't write, you can't substantiate something that you're doing. I mean, it ends up defining you. So if you have to be happy, or if you have to, everything reflects in your writing. So it's almost symbiotic. If you are relaxed in life, your writing becomes good. And if your writing becomes good, then you become relaxed in life. So it's like a constant struggle. So there are more pitfalls, and pitfalls are very individualistic pitfalls. What may be a bad thing for me may not be a bad thing for somebody else. It's just that there are no rules. You define your own rules. You define your own decorum. You define your own schedules. That you need to be very disciplined. So I feel that one of the biggest challenges of being a writer is that you really have to be very disciplined, and at the end of the day, you have to be your own boss. So if you think that you can be a good boss and you can be a tyrant at the same time, then I'm sure you'll enjoy writing. But otherwise, also if it gives you joy, I mean, economics has a term called cost benefit analysis. You're making 10 rupees today, you'll make 12 tomorrow, but you'll spend 4 hours traveling to your new job. So if you give up your new job, you're letting go of 2 rupees because that is the opportunity cost. So that would become a constant kind of a thing. And if you're a freelance writer, then it can be a really big struggle at times. There is a very big difference between writing a film and writing about films. For example, filmmaking is a mix of art and craft. There is a lot of science to it. For example, if you're writing a script, then you're actually on the page, you're writing on certain predefined format. You have to write in a certain way. The font size has to be a certain font size. The formatting has to be a certain way. Because what happens is that when you write a film script, 1 page of a film script ends up roughly translating into a minute of the film on screen. So if you're writing, if you're thinking of making a film which is around 2 hours long, so you need to hit around 95 pages to make it 120 minutes. So there is a certain format to it. And, it's completely different from writing on films. So when you're talking about writing on films, you can have film journalism, you can have film reporting. So you can also have film criticism, you can have film analysis, and then you can also look at films from an essay writing point of view. So to give you an example, when I say film journalism, then a film magazine of the past or the present, like, a Stardust or a Film Fair, that's the kind of writing we're talking about. So it will have its own segment. People will, you can have an interview, you can have a profile, you can have top 10 films of somebody, so on and so forth. When you're talking about film criticism, then you're actually looking at film from a critical point of view and trying to, appraise it, trying to juxtapose the story with some other social thing. I mean, whatever we read every Friday when a film comes up. That's, again, a very different kind of a writing, because there you have to address certain issues which are the demands of the format. So when you're doing film criticism or when you're doing film review, then you actually have to talk about the film and what entails in a film, what it means to you as a viewer or as somebody who's observing film. Now, film criticism is a little deeper than that. You actually start looking at a film and try to put it in a greater context of things. So, for example, you try to look at, if there is a certain kind of visual imagery in the film, which can be an allegory for something else. For example, there was a film called The Invasion of Body Snatchers. So the film's story was about this small American town in the middle of nowhere where aliens have attacked, and they have placed themselves within the bodies of the town people. So, for example, you would be you, I would be, me, but inside there is an alien sitting and making us function. Now, that film came out in the 50s, where the whole fear of communism taking over America was at its peak. Cold War was, really getting into being defined, and post-war, the differences between left and right had become very, very prominent. So the film was used as a tool to say that you don't know, but a foreign ideology will come and take over you, and you would become a puppet for some enemy of your country. So now, it's not there at the face of it, but then this is something that film criticism brings out. Now, when the film came out in the 50s, it was still not seen as clearly as we can as we can discuss it today. It's only the passage of time and repeated viewing that a critical analysis could come into place. Now, when you mix all these things, then you're essentially writing non-fiction about films, the kind of writing that I do. So the two books that I wrote, one was a biography. It was called Dark Star, The Loneliness of Being Rajesh Khanna. So it looked at one particular actor. It tried to decipher what that actor meant, A, to the film industry, B, to the people, C, historically speaking, what is the kind of impact that a persona like Rajesh Khanna had on people. So my book essentially is about Rajesh Khanna, but it talks about many more things. It talks about the idea of a leading man in popular Hindi cinema, the idea of a hero from, say, immediately after the independence till the millennium, the new millennium. So I look at a period between 1947 and 2000 and try to put Rajesh Khanna in that context and pivot my arguments around that. Through the book, I also investigate that even though you think of Rajesh Khanna as this big phenomenon in Hindi cinema, you essentially look at him between 1969, when Aradhna became a very big hit, to 1973, the last glorious year that he had, and that's the same year when Amitabh Bachchan's Zanjeer releases with Namak Haram, the two films, and the angry young man concept comes into being. But did Rajesh Khanna not have anything after that? And suddenly you will realize that the kind of roles that he was doing till, say, the mid 1980s or even the late 80s and early 90s, they were far more interesting options leading man than what we would imagine a leading man to choose. So these were the kind of questions that the book was looking at. Now, it's not a biography in the most obvious sense of the word, but it was still about one particular hero. The second book that I wrote looks at a film called Qayamat Se Qayamat Tak. And the slugline of the book, the title of the book says, it's the film that revived Hindi cinema. So what do I mean by that? Now, like I had taken one personality, here I took one film which released in 1988, and I made a statement on the Hindi films of that time. How did Hindi films reach to that place? How did this film came into being? Why is this film different? Even though it is a Hindi film, it is a commercial film, it has songs, it has hero, it has a heroine, it has family feud, everything which is Hindi films. Yet it brings in a new kind of storytelling. It brings in a new kind of narrative. The hero is a very, very big departure from the hero that we know of. Of course, he's a romantic hero. So you can say that he's a throwback to, say, Rajesh Khanna. But the only two heroes that come to mind when you think of Hindi films is either the action angry young man. Okay, so you can have Amitabh Bachchan, Vinod Khanna, Anil Kapoor, Jackie Shroff, Sanjay Dutt, all bundled into this big group. Or you think of this romantic boy next door, in which you have Shah Rukh Khan, you have Salman Khan, you have a little bit of Saif Ali Khan. But when did that start? So the argument that I make is that it's Qayamat Se Qayamat Tak, which is almost like before and after in Hindi cinema. So your style of filmmaking changes. Amir Khan becomes this embodiment of the new hero. And because the film is almost 3 decades old now, what is the kind of silent sociological influence it has had on cinema? So I compare the heroine of Qayamat Se Qayamat Tak to the heroines of, say, Dil Wala Hai Dulhaniya Le Jayenge, Dil Chahta Hai, Kuch Kuch Hota Hai. And I try to see that, is it that the more time we spend, the more years pass, are we becoming more modern, like we would want to describe? So there is a big comparison between the heroines of Dil Chahta Hai, which was supposed to be a modernistic film, and Qayamat Se Qayamat Tak, where the heroine is, for the want of any other word, a very typical Hindi film heroine. So again, it's a story of one film. It's about the making of this film. It's about the incidents of the film. It's about how the film got shaped, how the film released, what were the trials that it went through, and what is the impact it's had. But it is also a statement on what was happening to Hindi films at that time. Why did the change need to take place? What if it had not happened at that point? What is the influence it has had? How did the music change, after Qayamat Se Qayamat Tak? How did melody come back? So it's a deeper study of a time, but it's, a very specific study. So when you're writing on films, the canvas is very vast. It's very broad. how do you want to go about it? What is it that you want to say? It's totally your call. So there are, and both these books, interestingly, came through very small blog post ideas. So when I used to write, I used to have a film column with the Hindustan Times, and in around 2011, I think I wrote this piece. Qayamat Se Qayamat Tak was approaching its 25th anniversary, and the film's director Mansoor Khan had stopped making films for almost a decade, a little over a decade at that time. So I wrote a piece that, whatever happened to Mansoor Khan, why Qayamat Se Qayamat Tak is very important. And that article, which was around 800 words, is what, transformed into a complete 40,000 word book. Similarly, I was writing a book on the heroes in Hindi cinema when Mr. Khanna, Rajesh Khanna, fell ill. And at that time also I used to have columns with Hindustan Times, the Dawn in Pakistan, and a few other places. So when he died, I wrote a couple of articles. I wrote an obituary, I wrote a tribute, and I wrote one article where I took one song in Rajesh Khanna's life from a film called Aapki Kasam. The song was Zindagi Ke Safar Mein Guzar Jate Hain Jo Maqam. And I tried to, understand Rajesh Khanna's life, and I wrote in the article that one single song describes Rajesh Khanna's off-screen life. So I took a sentence from the song and I tried to put it in real life, and that became the basis for a book. So my editor, Shantanu at Harper, said that, why don't you look at a book on Rajesh Khanna? So that book, which was supposed to be about heroes in Hindi cinema, and had Rajesh Khanna as the center point, it was a before and after, that article and those posts, they turned that single piece again into an 80,000 word book. So the point that I'm trying to make is that you really don't know, what will end up becoming of an idea. But if the idea has some legs to stand on and you have a point to make, you will find a format, you will find something or the other. And today, most of a single line thought translated into articles, a couple of ideas translated into books for me. So film writing or writing on films is a very, very vast thing. So I can balance this with, on the same topic, I can sometimes have a book for an idea, I can have a column for an idea, I can have a series of columns for an idea. So the field is very, very vast. And again, it's to your advantage, because then you can very specifically choose something or some period that you want to talk about. I don't know how much it would resonate with somebody else. I'm a very lazy person by nature. I'm a procrastinator. I actually, like the John Lennon song goes, I actually would like to just sit and watch the wheel goes round and round and do nothing. So I often take too long to write. And sometimes the inspiration comes from the strangest of sources. And two incidents that happened with me, which kind of really put things in perspective for me and told me that, boss, you're doing the right thing or you're in the right field, is that once when I was writing the Rajesh Khanna book, I was taking a little too long to, get on with it and start writing it and, just pushing my deadlines. I actually had a dream where Mr. Rajesh Khanna came in my dream and told me that, why are you taking so long to write? And I mean, I'm, like I said, I'm a huge film buff and a filmy kida. So I have this thing of, imitating people. And I think I must have been drunk at a party before that and imitating Rajesh Khanna and, trying to make sense of it. And I swear to God, Vineet, I had this dream where I actually saw Rajesh Khanna in my dream saying, Gautam, tu itna time kyun le raha hai re? Jaldi likh. And it scared the bejesus out of me, and I really got down to it and I started writing. And if you think that this was a freak of nature, there was a portion in my book where I was writing about a film where Rajesh Khanna was working in, and it was directed by Rishi Kapoor. And I was trying to get through to Mr. Rishi Kapoor, and we had a couple of phone conversations, and the meeting was not taking place. And I remember just telling that somebody should tell Rishi Kapoor what an important job that I'm doing, and he must talk to me. Why is he not realizing this? And that night I had the strangest of the dreams again, where I saw Rishi Kapoor, Rajesh Khanna and myself sitting at a table, and Rajesh Khanna telling Rishi Kapoor that you must talk to him. So these were 2-3 strange things that came to my mind, and by the time I started writing the Rajesh Khanna book, Rajesh Khanna had passed away. So I feel that the spirit of Mr. Khanna somewhere came and pushed. So that is a incident that I like to share with people, because it just tells you that, what you're doing may have some resonance or some significance somewhere. So don't let the challenges bog you down. Don't think that your voice won't be heard. And like I had said, the technology has made the play field so even that you really don't know who's hearing you and you know who's reading you. So now, 5 years later, when I meet Rishi Kapoor, he's just come out with an autobiography of his, and he's been published by HarperCollins, and we have the same editor. So I met Mr. Kapoor at a dinner, and we started chatting, and he was telling me things that it took him to write, and I tried telling him that when you were not speaking to me, it was Rajesh Khanna's ghost who came and told me to do it. So yeah, I mean, it was that way. I mean, you really don't know who's going to read and how you're going to impact. So keep at it. It's sometimes it demands ghosts or great men to come and push you. But I think you should. I think if you want to be a writer, just keep it. It was a pleasure speaking to you, and all the best for your idea. I think it's a platform that needs to get out there, because sometimes you just need to know that there is somebody else who's kind of as dreamy as you are, and it's a nice way to connect to people. So all the best to you, and I'm glad to share my experiences.